This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, and I'm hashtag skinning. Today we're going to be taking a look at Skin, Part 3 by Logan96. This story was suggested at the behest of Logan96. He is a patron and wanted me to read and critique his story, and so that's what we're doing. If you haven't seen Part 1 and 2, please go look at those, and we're going to press on. My iced tea is making squeezy noises. I don't know if you hear that. Anyway, let's get into this. The next morning, I woke up alone in my grandparents' bedroom. The smell of breakfast permeated the air. My stomach growled hungrily as I slowly got off the air mattress. That is a really nice beginning. I think it's a much better beginning than the beginning of Part 2. This one really ground you in, like, there was a nightmare, and then you wake up, and then the nightmare is over. If you recall, at the end of Part 2, we still heard the sounds of the charred man saying, fresh skin in the hallway, down the hall. And then, you wake up and then it's like you're in another world again. It's like, the end of the nightmare, and you're waking up, the sun's peeking through, and you smell breakfast, and you're hungry, and you're like, yeah, okay, I didn't die in the night. So that short, little opening really does a lot of work. I could hear Stacey in her room talking to Grandpa. Grandpa, could I have a piggyback wide, please? Stacey asked. Sure, sweetheart, he said. As I walked down the stairs, I could hear Grandma talking to my mom on the phone. He's never sleepwalked, you say? You think he's making it up for attention? Grandma asked. All right, I'll talk to him, Grandma said, her voice smothered in concern. Okay, so, as mentioned before, Tommy, our narrator here, lied about sleepwalking to avoid explaining, a scenario that is too weird and too unbelievable for an adult to believe. And the result of that is they didn't believe his story on the low. Low-key, they didn't believe his story. And now, that's, being verified by Mom through Grandma, and we're getting that concern. Maybe he's doing it for attention. That's not looking good for our narrator. She hung up and tentatively finished walking down the stairs. I saw that there was a plate stacked with pancakes where I usually sat at the table. I walked past the living room, hoping Grandma wouldn't spot me. Grandma's old, bony hand rested on my shoulder. Tommy, we need to talk. You're getting to be about that age where your body's... No, I cursed at myself internally. I turned to face her. Grandma's wrinkled face buried in concern. Are you jealous of Stacey? Is that why you've been acting odd? I smiled to assuage her worry. No. She tousled my hair. Your grandfather and I love you both equally. I wrapped my arms around her. I know, Grandma. I love you too. She smiled, exposing her old yellow teeth. I made your favorite for breakfast. That sentence makes sense. I'm just an idiot. Grandpa came down the stairs with Stacey hanging off of his back, her arms and legs wrapped around his body. Pancakes, pancakes, Stacey squealed, like she did whenever we had pancakes. That sentence is fine. It's funny to say aloud. So, I like that the theory that the grandma comes up with is that they're that Tommy's jealous of Stacey, because Stacey is a little attention whore. And, Tommy is fully cognizant of this fact, that this is how his sister behaves. But again, that's not the thing that's bothering him. And the fact that his sister acts that way seems not to really bother him at all. He seems rather indifferent to that. And so I like that tension there. And like, even though this is putting the seed in the grandma's mind that this is for attention, it's also, a good moment of that tension is kind of being deflated here. If it gets lit back, inflated again later, that's good, because here we're having it deflate, because he can believably say, like, no, that's not the issue, He's not lying that that's not an issue. Stacey, Grandpa, and Grandma joined me at the table. It sounds like It sounds like a blood-curdling scream is suddenly ringing out, startling Stacey, causing her to shriek in her seat, eyes wide and frightened. Grandma and Grandpa roll their eyes. That phrasing is off. It sounds, join me at the table, it sounds like a blood-curdling scream. It should be what sounds like a blood-curdling scream. So fixing up that phrasing there. How many times do I have to tell you to lower that damn TV, Grandpa said. I remained apathetic. I knew John was watching Friday the 13th, or some other horror movie that I'm not allowed to see. The screaming ebbed, then creaking of stairs and feet stomping reverberated through the house. John walked into our kitchen. John walked into our kitchen? Shouldn't it be the kitchen? It's not his kitchen. Unless he, spends a lot of time at the grandparents' house, I wouldn't say that he has possession over it. His messy, unkempt hair spilling down his back. A few buttons on his shirt undone, fat pushed through the unopened section. He was as pale as a corpse. His eyes were empty and vacant. Morning, John, Grandpa said with a hint of concern in his voice. John didn't reply. He walked over to Grandpa and placed that check in front of him. Do you smoke? He asked. Grandpa squinted in confusion. No, I don't. Peg and I quit smoking 10 years ago. Why do you ask? So the fact that horror movies had already been, built into the story that John was a fan of these horror movies, helps that moment. And then we get this moment about smoking, and this is going to be like a seventh heaven moment of, who is, smoking the cigarettes. Oh no, it's a problem. We have to have a family meeting about this. John sighed and crossed his arms. I keep smelling smoke at night. That's odd, Grandpa said, trying to make sense of the information. I also hear this awful clanging at night. I haven't had a good night's sleep in a week. I've been falling asleep at work. My boss says that if it happens again, I'm fired. So I'd like it if there was something done about the smell of the noise. You get your rent on time, and I'm out of your way. The most I expect is not to tolerate awful smells and irritating sounds when I'm trying to sleep, John said. Grandpa said that's odd, and then there's a quote, and the quote is, I hear this awful clanging at night, and then there's a paragraph break, and there's another quote, which makes it seem like it's Grandpa, but it's actually John saying it, so you want to clear that up, maybe to squish those two things together for clarification. My grandfather sat there nodding, listening thoughtfully. You're right, John. I'll see what I can do. John thanked my grandfather and left, so this is confirming that this isn't all in the head of the children. John is aware of these supernatural phenomena as well, just not to the same degree, it seems. Grandpa directed a cold stare at Stacey. Stacey, are you playing with your trike at night? No, Grandpa. Stacey. Yes, Grandpa. Playing with trike at night. No, Papa. No, Grandpa. It wasn't me. It was the girl, Stacey said. Okay, so Stacey is too young to know any better, that isn't going to play, but Tommy is old enough to have, seen more of the world and know that he might be going crazy or that there's something weird going on, and so he's lying. Stacey is just like, nah, it's the girl on the track with a weird head on her neck, And so Stacey, hasn't learned that the nail that stands out gets hammered down yet, and I like that detail. Stacey, he said sternly, her head lowered to the floor in shame. Grandpa leaned forward. You need to take responsibility for your actions and be respectful of others. I work in a gas station when I was 21, just like John. I know how it is dealing with people. It's probably worse dealing with people on very little sleep, and on top of that, his job is in jeopardy. No more tricycle at night, Grandpa said harshly. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. He tousled hair and grinned. Should be her hair. Okay, so with that, Stacey would have avoided problems by just saying, no, Grandpa. But the fact that he said, that she said, no, Grandpa, it was the girl, is what bit her there. and now she's just kind of like going along with it. And I think that that's always a frustrating scenario. I think that there have been, I'm sure everyone has had times when they were a kid when they weren't believed, but just kind of like had to go along with, you know, whatever was being put forward, if it was punishment or whatever, because, you know, lying, being seen as lying would just make it worse. So you just have to, you know, ironically lie and go along with something. And not being believed by adults is a very frustrating scenario. Okay. What about the smell? Grandma inquired. My grandpa pursed his lips. It's probably Nick. He hates going outside to smoke, so he lights up inside. He probably hoped nobody would notice. I'll talk to him later. After breakfast, Grandpa ran some errands. Stacey and I watched Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in the living room while Grandma read The Shining. We're getting a lot of details about, you know, this book and that movie and everything. You might want to pare that down a little bit. Because those are a lot of details to remember. And again, detail is always important. Minute details, go into it, but, name dropping, you know, The Shining and everything. I don't know that, like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I can remember specific times I read Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I don't know that you would remember what your grandma was reading, for instance. Again, all just thoughts. There was another thought that I had. What was that thought? Oh, the bit about, you know, John having his job in jeopardy and, you know, teaching someone the real life ramifications of, what their actions are. That's a thing that you need to do with children every once in a while. So I like this moment. I like that, you know, Grandpa is empathetic of where John is in his life, that he's not where he wants to be, and, that this is making it worse on him. So I like all of those details. Very realistic. A car pulled into the driveway. The door slammed and heavy footsteps going to the third floor echoed. Grandma looked up from the book. That might be John. I hope he didn't get fired. The movie came to its end. Stacey cocked her head to the left and noticed the cloudless, bright blue sky and fresh-cut grass, butterflies with beautiful opalescent patterns on their wings sat on the window. She looked at me and said, "Will you push me on the swing?" I looked out the window. Sure. So everything is perfect in the neighborhood outside, everything is beautiful, and if Blue Velvet has taught me anything, that means something bad is about to happen. After a few minutes of pushing Stacey, I had an odd feeling in the pit of my gut. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I felt like someone was staring at us. I looked around and I saw John looking down at us from his window. I could swear I could see charred hands caress his face. Nausea swept over me like a tidal wave. All the muscles in my body tensing up. Feeling paralyzed, I wanted to scream, but when I opened my mouth, no sound came out. He realized I was staring back at him and moved away from the window. Okay, so maybe John is in on this, or John can't see him or feel him, the charred man, that is. So there's something weird going on here. I smelled the pork chops through the air. Grandma's head was poking out through the kitchen window. The sun trapped behind archipelago of clouds. The archipelago of clouds, an archipelago of clouds. Tommy, Stacey, time for dinner. Come on, Stacey, I said. She jumped off the swing and went inside. After dinner, we all watched America's Most Wanted, then called it a night. Again, it strains credulity. I don't know why I'm having problems saying that you would remember all of these details. But I would say that there might be excessive paragraph breaks here. Come on, Stacey, I said. She jumped off the swing and we went inside. After dinner, we all watched America's Most Wanted, then called it a night. I don't know why that's 3 sentences. That could be a paragraph together, you know. As I laid in bed, terrified of what was going to happen tonight, I heard screaming coming from the 3rd floor. I surmised John was watching another horror film too loudly. Eventually, I fell back asleep, happy the man hadn't visited me. Alright, so, clearly setting up the horror movies for this moment of like, oh, it's just a false alarm, you know, cried wolf scenario, so you're not going to pay attention to it when there probably was something bad happening in the middle of the night. I woke up feeling great because I slept the entire night without an unwanted visitor. An awful smell offended my olfactory. It smelt fish guts. It smelt fish guts? Should it be I smelt fish guts? Or it smelled like fish guts? The terrible smell did little to suppress my hunger. I walked downstairs and sat at the kitchen table with everyone. Grandma made French toast sticks on my plate. To my dismay, that putrid stench stuck to my nostrils, not allowing me to enjoy the sweet aroma of the golden brown logs. That's a very 90s snack, French toast logs, that you get from the, you put in the toaster, and oh man, that's a blast from the past. So it seems that, okay, yeah, I'm gonna read on before I make that comment. My face twisted in disgust. Does anyone else smell that? Yuck! Stacey exclaimed, sticking her tongue out and rolling her eyes in the back of her head. Grandpa. I'm sorry, but these spelling mistakes are cracking me up. It says Grandpa. Hacked and gagged. Yeah, I do. I think it's coming from the 3rd floor. Hold on, I'll see what it was. Okay, so everyone does smell this, but it seems as though maybe the kids are more in tune with the smell. Looks like it's a supernatural smell a little bit, but everyone can smell it somewhat. Oh, he ran upstairs, the squeaking of the stairs as he ran up echoing through the house. The whine and screech of door hinges reverberated through the house. Hey, John, we could hear him say. Okay, why was he running upstairs? Do you mean like run metaphorically, like he was, taking a brisk pace, or was he actually running up the stairs? Because he doesn't have any sense of urgency. It's a weird smell, I wouldn't investigate it with that much vigor. John, oh my God, Grandpa screamed. I haven't heard a scream like that before, and I don't think I will again. Grandpa rushed downstairs. Tommy, take Stacey to your room and don't come until I say, he yelled. What? I said confused and scared. Don't ask questions, just do it, he interrupted. Peggy, call 911, he barked. Grandma rushed over to the phone, while I took Stacey into my room. Stacey sat down on the bed. What's going on? I don't know, I replied. Her eyes filled with tears. Is anyone hurt? My friend said he was going to get, kin from John. I hope he's okay. My blood turned cold in my veins. So it seems like John might have gotten skinned. The sound of sirens filled the air. I looked out the window and saw an ambulance in the driveway. My grandmother was hysterical. Grandpa remained stoic as he talked to the EMTs. I watched them out the window, carrying a body with a sheet draped over it. Grandma and Grandpa were silent for the rest of the day. Feeling solemn, confused, and afraid, we decided to stay the rest of the day. We stayed inside and watched old reruns of Tom and Jerry. After a while, Grandma and Grandpa sent us to bed. I hate to say it, but I'm kind of running into some issues here. So if John got skinned, what was the mechanism for this goat? Because I look at, cryptids, ghosts, whatever. They have to have a set of rules applied to them that are consistent and make sense. Like Freddy Krueger can only kill you in your dreams kind of thing. Jason is an unstoppable monster, but there are certain things like he'll get confused if someone dresses up as his mother. There are consistent rules. What are some other ones? Some monsters are afraid of light. Werewolves only come out on full moons. Things like this. There needs to be some consistent rules. Why did the child not get skinned, but the adult did? Was it because it was a child? If so, why was it talking to the child? Like, there needs to be some explanation of the rules at some point, even if they're not explicitly spelled out. Predators deciding how they kill victims and everything. Things like this, this stuff is important. And I'm not necessarily seeing a logic as to why John was skinned and Tommy wasn't. And that's a bit of a problem. I do like that scenario of a bigger brother trying to explain to younger sister what's going on without knowing and just being like, I'm helpless, sis. But the fact that they stayed there is really weird. I think the first thing I would do if I was a grandparent in that scenario is say, look, daughter and or son, you gotta come pick up your child, your children immediately and get them out of here. Something horrible has happened, and I don't know how it happened, and obviously something isn't safe here. Preferably, can we stay the night at your house too? Get away from whatever spontaneously skinned John. That night, I was wide awake. I could hear Grandpa and Grandma talking downstairs beneath my floor. His voice was too muffled to understand clearly, so I got down on the floor and pressed my ear to the cold wood that was as cold as January ice. I heard him say. See, phrasing like that, as opposed to as hot as a volcano, as cold as January ice. I know what that means, and, well, I know what volcano means too, but like, there's ice, there's cold, and then there's January ice, where it's like this dead of winter. There's no holiday spirit anymore. It's just, that is a lot more, January ice is a lot more of a thumb in the eye than December ice. What a way to go. All of the ways you could kill yourself. His voice got more and more muffled. I couldn't hear him at all. I gave up and laid on my bed. As I was about to drift off to sleep, I heard a voice say from outside my door, "More skin." So that's a good ending, that last bit. But I do wonder if how he killed himself. If they're coming to that conclusion that he killed himself, but presumably he was skinned because this thing wants skin. Now, to what degree he was skinned, we don't know. But if it was, as simple as slitting his wrist or his throat or something, that doesn't seem consistent with what this monster is looking for, what this charred man is looking for. The skin taker, if you will, which I guess I'll take to calling him. So, again, a number of criticisms here, but I think that ultimately this stuff can be ironed out. The biggest problem is definitely what are the mechanics of this monster, and they don't need to be spelled out exactly, but they do need to be there. There do need to be some guidelines. It's still perfectly reasonable that there is a consistent guideline for how it works, how this monster works, but we haven't seen any evidence of that consistency yet. I do know that the grandparents did rush into the room, but, then I guess the rule is that you have to be alone for him to visit you. It's a little confusing, especially seeing as the grandparents seem oblivious to the existence of this creature, but John is not. Do let me know what you think down in the comments. Do try and give some constructive criticism to Logan to help improve his story. They are very much so open to criticism, so bear that in mind. Now, if you want to continue that conversation, you can pop over to my Discord, Dead Palettes Ashcan School, where we only have 4 text chat boards: Ashcan Horror, Meme and Chat, Horror Analysis, and Pharmacy. You can support me by liking this video and following me on social media like Twitter and Tumblr. Links to everything down in the description. Thank you so much for your time, and now on to our sponsor at this non-moment in time, which is Principal Skinner. Principal Skinner. So you call them steamed hams despite the fact they are obviously grilled.